Good morning. Good morning. Coming here from Circle Healing Network, Robin McClendon, and I'm doing a quick short video here. And excuse the glare in my glasses. I've spent the last 5 minutes literally trying to figure out how to get the glare from the computer screen on my glasses. So if anyone has a solution for this, feel free to leave me a comment below because I don't really know. I'm actually going to have some different glasses done up with the non-glare lens. But I thought that was more so for me reading, not so much for the glare coming off the screen. So anyway, enough of that. So today I decided that I was going to jump into the Mandela Effect and do a video on it. There's a lot of videos on the all around the internet, YouTube, everything on this, and there's some really, really good stuff out there. And the reason why I decided to jump in is because I've been looking at a lot of them, and my memories are similar to a number of them, different from others, and that's a part of the effect. No problem there. The other thing I like about this movement is that, people seem to be friendly about it. I mean, you get some folks who are like, oh, you're stupid, you can't remember anything. But for the most part, the whole idea of this particular effect is we all are remembering things differently. There's a lot of things that are the same that we're remembering, which is what creates the phenomena. But then there are those of us who remember certain things, but then we don't remember other things that the same people who remembered the first set of things do remember. So that also makes it interesting. But what I wanted to share, and just because I've been doing a lot of research on this, and I've noticed that the phenomena is really gaining, it's like a snowball rolling down the hill. It's really picking up steam. But it's something that I've come across over this past decade, actually, with doing a lot of the research with the work that I do. And I kept on coming across these strange anomalies, and I would just think, oh, well, maybe it's just an oddity of some sort. And then you'd hear people say different things. And of course, the Mandela effect has been talked about for a few years. And my memory was sketchy on that. I sort of felt like I remember hearing that he had died in prison. And then when he was released, I just released those memories. I thought, well, maybe I didn't remember that. I didn't see a funeral. I never saw it written in a newspaper article or anything like that. So I just assumed that he had been in jail for so long and for so many years, you can kind of perceive people as having been dead that weren't. So, so I didn't jump in and on that at any point. But what's interesting is that I was doing some research about a year ago that had to do with logos, the corporate logos and strawman names and all of that. And I hit upon this corporate logo phenomena, and I did a lot of notes, and I'm certain of certain logos. So, oh my goodness. So when I went back to look at some of that stuff that I did a year ago, for which I did notes on, some of them are definitely different. Now at the time, I didn't think to take screenshots of some of this stuff, nor do I think it would have mattered, because it seems the way this effect works, anything that has to do with written or things that come across the computer, generated images, it seems to really take over transforming that. It's been interesting that people have been able to go back into old like library files of, what were those things called? We used to always call them. They were archived, and they were called, it'll come to me. It used to be on microfiche. And so on the old microfiche machines, which is what it looks like, people have gone back and gotten stuff from that, you can find some of the old names spelled a particular way. So it's interesting that the shift hasn't occurred there. Yet people can take books off of their shelves or movies off of their shelves that have been there for the longest time. In some kind of way, a lot of those things are changed. So this is a really interesting phenomenon. And I can't even begin to say that I can even tell you why or what I even think it is. There's certainly some kind of strange timeline anomalies going on here, as well as some dimensional shifts maybe. But that's not what I'm even putting this video up today about. because I'm still down the rabbit hole, really wanting to get to what this is all about. And I have a tendency not to be quick to jump to conclusions about what I think something is. I like to spend a little more time on it. So, but what I did want to throw a few things into the conversation here for people to continue to look at and give me feedback in terms of if you remember these things. I'm trying to deal with things that haven't been touched yet, because people have already done really good jobs on those things. However, I will start off with the most popular one, the Berenstain Bears, and I will give you my memory of it because it seems like it alters slightly from anything I've heard, but I do believe that there's other people out there that have a similar memory, because that just seems how it works. So my oldest daughter, who is now in her late 20s, loved the Berenstain Bears. She was an avid reader. She really wasn't much on television. And as I homeschooled my children, I really encouraged them to be more readers, or we would look at movies, but I wasn't into them just being on the television. In fact, we had huge television moratoriums at our house. I mean, months at a time. You know, I just trained them not to look at television, be television junkies. So we spent a lot of time at the library getting movies and getting books. So she always checked out the Berenstain Bears. I mean, in fact, she read all of the books in this series because that's what she would do. If she got onto something, she'd just read them all. And it was definitely Berenstain, just in the case. I'm not even like debating that in my mind. It was Berenstain Bears. I was homeschooling her. You know, how we said things and how we looked at things, and language was important. Also, I'm a teacher. And I've taught university. I've been adjunct faculty at a number of institutions. So things like that, you just kind of pay attention to, sort of naturally, you know? So anyway, when it came to my attention that it was not any longer the Berenstain Bears was in the early 2000s. I want to say, I don't have an exact date, but I want to say that it might have been maybe 2005, 2006, because my youngest daughter came along, and she was of the age then, because she was born in 2001, that she would have started looking at the Berenstain Bear shows. I think they came on PBS, if I remember correctly. And we were going to the library, getting books and what have you. Now, I remember this sitting there looking at a television show with her on PBS, the Berenstain Bears. And it came on, and what hit me as really odd, and I have this memory even right to this moment, is that it doesn't seem like it was the Berenstain any longer. It was the Berenstain. There was no I. It was B-E-R, how is it, Berenstain? B-E-R-E-N-S-T-E-N. And I remember looking at that thinking, Berenstain Bears. And I thought, I know it was Berenstain Bears. And so when it came back on at the end, you know, when it runs the whole little credits again, I really got up on that television. I looked at it and I thought, Berenstain Bears, and it was an E. And so I thought, okay, Robin, maybe you just never saw the I. Maybe you just, I don't know, just didn't see the I. Even though then it just seemed like, no, I had to see the I. But there it was with an E, no I. So I said, okay. And she looked at many shows with this thing being Berenstain Bears. And every time I looked at it, I would think to myself, wow, how did you get it that wrong? You know? So, of course, when people started, and then, you know, I heard about the Mandela Effect. And then recently, in recent months, when this Berenstain came up, now you can imagine, I'm thinking, oh, hell no. It's not Stain. It's no way it's Stain. This is the third trip for me now. From Berenstain to Berenstain to Berenstain. That doesn't even make any sense. There's no way it was Berenstain. I can, like the guy, the cook on the cook show, years ago. He was a country guy down south, and he would come up with the best recipes. But he used to say, "I can guarantee you." Well, I can guarantee you it was not stained. I already had enough problems with the E being dropped, the I being dropped, Berenstain. So some kind of way, there are certain markers, and I don't know why the Berenstain Bears would be a marker, but there's certain markers, it seems, that are like maybe breadcrumbs along the way for us, where these changes, these anomalies are occurring. And like with the Mandela or the deaths of many, famous figures. In some kind of way, whatever path this is leading us down, these are markers. And what I would encourage listeners to do is go back in your memories, and some of the things that you're being asked to say, do you remember was Fruit Loops or spelled F-U-R-I-T or F-R-O-O-T? See if there was an interim shift, because Fruit Loops have been out a long time. So it seems like things that have been out for a really long time, there could be interim periods where it was even spelled different from where it appears now. And see if that jogs your memory, because that's certainly true for me. And even though I said I wasn't going to weigh on the other stuff, I have to say something about Fruit Loops, because when I was a kid, Fruit Loops was my favorite cereal. That and Frosted Flakes. Tony the Tiger. Wasn't it Tony the Tiger? Yeah. And Fruit Loops. Now, Fruit Loops was definitely spelled F-R-U-I-T. And because my memory is that some of the older packages used to have fruit dancing around on the box. Like it'll be like little cherries or strawberries or orange, slices, and like little things floating around on the box. And as a kid, sitting there with the box right in front of me and the cereal bowl right in front of me with my milk in it, because I always had to have at least 2 bowls. So you have the box right there. We all used to read the cereal boxes. Didn't you used to read the cereal boxes? I did. You just read them. You're looking at them. And I remember my favorite fruit flavor is cherry. So if I'm going to eat anything, I'm going to taste the cherry first to see if it tastes like cherry. Because if it tastes like cherry, I like to save them so that I can have the cherry last. So Fruit Loops cherry never tastes like cherry. In fact, none of the flavors in there seem like taste like the flavors to me. They just taste like sugar that had color on it, little color circles, and slight variation in the taste, but nothing like how candy was. You knew the like Jolly Ranchers taste like watermelon or cherry or apple or green apple, remember? But Fruit Loops wasn't like that. They just sort of tasted sort of maybe fruity with the sugar taste. But so I remember thinking and looking at the box and seeing the little cherries and then saying it fruit, F-R-U-I-T. And I would think to myself, it doesn't taste like fruit though. I wonder why they name it Fruit Loops, but it really doesn't ever taste like fruit. So that's why I know the Fruit Loops was spelled like the word fruit, because I remember those memories every morning, day in, day out, having my cereal before I go to school. That's just not something that you could get wrong. Double O's. But I'm going to come back to that because I want to hit grammar. So that's where I start with this thing. So I want to move on to some corporate logos, because this is what I studied a year ago, because I was working on the whole thing of sovereignty and your straw man, and how our name in uppercase has been used with our birth certificate, and how the U.S. government uses that to, pay off to guarantee their debt, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure many of you who are listening to this now have heard about that, or know about it intimately, or have heard something about it. So my background, let me just put this out as well, is my first degree was in graphic design and photography. But that wasn't good enough for my family, because my parents, who are teachers themselves, and they've always been teachers, they've always been in education. My mother did a period of time in corporate America, but she's back in education now. They were sort of concerned about this art degree thing. Like, are you really going to be able to do anything with that, make a living, So I went back to school and I studied history. and with an emphasis in archaeology. So, so my background is initially in graphic design. So I have a tendency to look at everything with a graphic designer's eye. I look at logos all the time. I'm driving down the street, I look at a logo on the truck, and I ask myself, is that a successful logo or not? And sometimes they're like terrible logos. And I think to myself, I wonder why that person accepted that logo from the graphic designer. What about it made them think it was a good representation for their company? So I'm really kind of picky when it comes to logos. I mean, I'm always feeling like your logo should really reflect your corporate mission, image, etc. So I've been playing this game for 30 years looking at logos. Okay, I mean, so when I came across this whole straw man thing, the uppercase, lowercase, and we're taught in school to write our name. First name would be, first letter is uppercase, all the rest are lower. Middle name, first letter uppercase, the rest lower. Last name, uppercase, the rest lower, right? That's how we were taught to write our names. That's correct, the way to represent a proper noun. Okay. So what I started noticing with the whole straw man thing, everything is an uppercase. When they send you your social security card, your passport, anything, everything comes uppercase. And they've been doing it for years. So this is not new. But what's new is people started noticing that our names were being written like corporations, because corporations always wrote the name of the corporation uppercase. And we can go back in time and see where everything was always uppercase. And they did it because they were a corporation. And with that uppercase writing, it protects them to against certain things, and it entitles them to certain things. That's a part of corporate law, okay? So, but the only time our names were ever written in uppercase, the whole entire letters in the entire name, is, like I said, on things like government documents. When our birth certificate is reissued, if you have one where it was written in handwriting in the hospital, it'll be like we were taught, every first letter uppercase, the rest lowercase. But when it's reissued, it's always all in uppercase. So security cards, all in uppercase. So, and then when you receive bills, once we got to that magical age of receiving bills, all your bills come in uppercase. Interesting. So they're holding you as a corporation. So they're holding you to pay that bill and to the contract that you signed, which also was an uppercase. If you go back and look at any of your old contracts or anything, your name is always in uppercase. It's never lowercase. All your phone bills, your utility bills, everything uppercase, because they're holding you to your birth certificate, to your social security, etc., as a corporation. So you have to pay that thing based upon the legalities of the contract that you sign. Okay. So what I started noticing about a year and a half or so ago, maybe closer to 2 years now, is that slowly all the corporations that we grew up, knew and loved, some we hated, were now making their names of their corporations lowercase. In some cases, all lowercase, like Xerox, Zerox, all lowercase. Intel, Intel, all lowercase. In some cases, they reverted to the way we were taught in school. Is that like Bank of America? It's the B, the O, and the A are uppercase, but the rest of it's lowercase. Bank of America used to be all uppercase. Now, in the instance of Wells Fargo has kept their logo, because the orange box with the yellow writing in it is their logo. So it's all uppercase still in the logo, but every document that they send, everything they do, and when you look it up, it's all lower, it's all, capital W, capital F, everything lowercase. So I noticed this phenomenon of corporations beginning to slide back into using their name in a non-corporate style. And what made me think about this, I was like, okay, what tricks are they up to? Because this is how I think about it. Okay, they're being tricky now. Why are they doing this? Because it seems to me that by them going back to lowercase on things and we accepting it, but we still sign contracts with them where we're uppercase, well, now they don't have to be held to the contract. Like if they're supposed to provide you with something, well, they can slide out of it now because you let them sign a document in which their corporate identity wasn't being used. Just an idea here, guys. I have no proof on this. I have not even heard anyone talk about this on blogs or on YouTube. And I chose not to at the time I was researching it because there was other rabbit holes I was down, and I really wasn't trying to go down the whole sovereignty straw man thing that was being well diced and sliced. So, but I bring it up now in the interest of the Mandela effect, because what I'm noticing is that when those logos change, I never really heard anybody talk about the lowercase thing. Nobody saw it as a Mandela effect. And even now, people are not talking about that as a Mandela effect. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's just corporations decided to go lowercase, but they're certainly not saying, they're not admitting to it. They're not saying, well, we've done this for this reason or that reason. And oftentimes they'll just state it as a logo change. But I believe it's a legal change as well. However, what I do feel is more of a Mandela effect is some of them, their logos, in fact, have also changed. So let's talk about Target. Now, Target always had a bullseye because it's like a target. So for something to be a target, you have the center point and you have some rings around it, right? My memory had Target with a center circle all filled in and 2 rings around it. Now it's 1 ring. But I remember it having at least the 2 rings because I thought that's okay, that makes sense. It's a target. It's a bullseye. Target. You go there, bam, everything you want's gonna be right there. Bullseye, right? That's how my mind thought about the logo, because here again, I analyze logos, and so to me that made sense. If I had just seen the circle with 1 ring around it, I would think, wow, they really messed up on that, because that doesn't really look like a target. It doesn't look, it could be anything. So when I did this research about a year and a half ago, I did Target, because to me, I was also thinking, remember, I'm down the corporate road of why they're changing their names to lowercase, and Target used to be uppercase as well. And what was the connection? So I looked into Saturn, because naturally Saturn is something that comes up a lot in this conversation around sovereignty and all this stuff that happens. And so I looked at Saturn. So I'm gonna do a screen share here real quick. And let me just do this one, because I have some pages opened. And okay, let's get into the symbols. Hope you guys can still see me. Okay, good. So if we look here, let's go up to the top. There's a lot of work on Saturn, tons of it. Here's a crop circle in which Saturn, the rings of Saturn and the rings of Uranus are being represented. And here again, you have a center with rings around it. And if we want to look at this larger, you have this whole unit with this unit and then this unit. Now, even though Saturn has, well, you know, it has a lot of rings, because it can look more like this right here, right? So it, you know, because it's gaseous, we know that. We learned that in school. So oftentimes it's represented with 3. So this would be the center one, and then it would be 1, 2, 3 rings. So same thing, 1, 2, 3 rings. Let's look at an image. And I think the reason why it's done like that is because of this photo, A, B, C, because the rings are separated here. So all that gaseous, even though there's multiple striations in here, it still is considered a band, a band, a band, right? Let's look up a little further here. Here we are again. One, and oftentimes they'll do 2 rings on Saturn. You'll see when you do imagery, it'll be the center ball, which is opaque, a ring. Okay, so here we are here, a ring, and then the ball. Okay, you see the point I'm getting at. So can you imagine a year ago when I was doing this research? Let me see if there's anything else I want to show you on this one. By the way, this is the new Volvo symbol. Can you get with it? Which is Saturn still, the male symbol. It's got Volvo going through it. I've owned a number of Volvos and never had this piece right here. Guarantee you, it was just a circle with Volvo running through it. So anyway, okay. So I'm gonna stop that and then so what I know about this whole process that I'm showing you is I'm showing you how I went down the rabbit hole. So when I looked up the target symbol and I looked up the whole Saturn thing, and I said, well, maybe there could be some corporate connection there. Doesn't mean that it had to be negative. It doesn't mean that Saturn was, that Target was Cabal or Illuminati or any of that Saturn stuff. It could mean that it was just connecting with the power of Saturn, which also is a very powerful, mythology. So, but what I want to say to you is that it made sense to me because it had 2 rings with the ball in the middle. So I thought, okay, well, maybe there's some kind of connection. So I just slid it to the side. I wasn't drawing any conclusions. I was researching. So I bring up Target because I know that a year and a half ago when I did this, you could find the symbols with 2 circles and the ball. So I'm just asking, does anybody have that memory? You can certainly comment below if you do, because I remember 2 circles in the ball. I don't remember this one now. When you drive by, it looks stupid. You're driving down the road and you see this red dot in the middle and 1 ring around it. That could be the sun, but because the sun has that symbol. That is the astrological sign for the sun. So if I had seen that, I would have thought, well, maybe they're connecting with the sun because that's the symbol for it, not Saturn, which was what they had before. Okay. So anyway, I'm just sharing how my mind is thinking because a lot of us are saying, no, I don't have that memory. No, my memory. But I wanted to open the dialogue on my channel around it because I wanted to share with you also my thought processes, how I'm thinking, how I process stuff. And in that processing, my memory is also attached to a process. It's not just attached to, oh yeah, I remember Fruit Loops. Well, I remember Fruit Loops because I sat there day in, day out reading the box thinking it didn't taste like fruit, reading it that it said fruit. If it had just been F-R-O-O-T, I probably would have thought, that's a strange spelling. And okay, cool, because it doesn't taste like fruit. So I guess they're just kind of doing a play on the words. I mean, think about it. That's how we think. So we talked about the corporate names, lowercase.